What's going on, everybody? Today we have a special guest for our second podcast. I'll let him introduce himself real fast.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Zaid Alfa.
And Zaid has been working with me at Spirit Club for a long time. He has a lot of expertise when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to gut health, mental health, and overall, he's been a person that's been helping me kind of break down what I have to do to be healthy, get into making SMART goals, the acronym SMART goals. And yeah, so Zaid, first and foremost, what's going on with you, man?
Man, I can't complain. We're having a great day. Knocked out a workout about an hour ago, and it was great.
That's dope, man. So, Zaid, during this pandemic, what are some things you've been doing to stay active, and how's your nutrition been?
It's definitely had its ups and downs. I think all of us kind of got hit with this in different ways, depending on the life situation that we're in, our work situation, whether you have family, kids in school, all that stuff. And me personally, I don't have any kids. My job, in a way, I guess, became a little easier. I was able to work from home and work outdoors, and that kind of made it a little bit easier to move around and kind of stay active.
Right.
And that was kind of the adjustment that I had to kind of do.
Right.
So it was a very different routine. And kind of when it first started, I just told myself, I'm like, okay, I have no idea what the next, few weeks, few months are going to look like.
Right.
What do I have control over? And the answer to that is usually I have control over, my body, how I move it, and my nutrition, what I put into my body, how I eat, how much water I'm drinking, and all that good stuff, as well as where my focus and my attention goes. And so I put all of my focus and my attention on my health, because I knew that there was just so much uncertainty. I just got hit with a lot of anxiety. I was like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen with work, with, all of the stuff going on in politics and just the coronavirus itself. And so with all that going on the outside, I kind of just honed my focus in on those three things. It was just what am I going to focus on mentally? How am I going to move and exercise, and what will I eat? So that's kind of the mentality that I had when this kind of first started.
Yeah, basically things that you can control. That's kind of what you focused on.
Exactly, yeah, because if I focus on everything else that I can't control, it's just indefinite stress.
And you know what? When you adjusted, I remember I had a discussion with you. You had a time period when you were like, let me just have a cleanse where I just go through a rigid and fixed schedule. When it comes to nutrition, sleep, cutting out a lot of toxins out of your body. How did that turn over? Because I think most people will kind of be surprised to hear how that kind of rolled out for you.
Yeah, definitely. So I was never a big fan of cleanses or diets to begin with, and I would say I've never actually done one up until maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And the very reason that I did one to begin with is when I found out about gut health and basically how the lifestyle that you have, the movement that you do or don't do, the amount of sleep that you get, the kinds of food that you eat, and how you manage stress all affect your gut. And in our guts live billions and billions of little living bacteria. In fact, they occupy more of our human cells. So it's kind of funny when you think about it. We're more bacteria than human in terms of just cells. And they do a lot, from helping us digest food, helping our immune system, producing things like serotonin, which helps regulate mood, appetite, sex drive, sleep, all the good stuff. And one of the things I realized was that my gut was really unhealthy. I was dealing with a lot of indigestion, a lot of bloating, even when I was eating, like healthy food. It was like instantly getting sleepy and passing out after I ate like avocados and eggs and stuff.
Right.
And the more I learned about it, the more I realized that I was putting things in my body that were hurting my gut. And dairy was a really big one, because I was lactose intolerant. I knew lots of people who were lactose intolerant, and it was just like, hey, it makes you bloated, you got to run to the bathroom, it's not a big deal. But the more I learned about it, I realized that it does have long-term effects on our health in terms of how the gut operates. And the more we expose our gut to things that it can't digest, the more damage it does to it, the more of that good bacteria we lose. And in turn, it affects how our brain functions.
Right.
And that's what led me to do that cleanse. I was like, okay, so I have to heal my gut. And I learned that through the work of Dr. Mark Hyman, who authored the Ultramind solution. So I didn't just come up with this on my own. I followed the guidelines of, like a functional doctor who's had a lot of experience with this and kind of pioneered that field. And when I did that cleanse for the first time, which was just eating whole foods, kind of cooking everything, nothing frozen, nothing in a package, no dairy, no gluten, and no sugar for 2 months straight. Man, it was both brutal in terms of just like the discipline and just, I guess, like the mental stress of cutting that stuff out that just feels so good. But then within like the first 3 to 4 weeks, my energy shot up, my sleep improved. I wasn't getting as bloated. And within, kind of by the end of it, I felt like great after I ate. Like I didn't have to fall asleep. And it's like I realized like, oh, like you're not supposed to feel tired after you eat. You're supposed to get, like the food is replenishing your body. It shouldn't be, like taking it down.
Right.
And that was the turning point for me. And once the pandemic started, kind of take it back to that, I kind of had that same mentality again. I was like, all right, we just got hit with something big. We don't know how it's going to turn. Let me focus on what I can control. And I kind of redid that cleanse again. And it just helped me gain control over my health and, my life.
Yeah. You know what? What you mentioned is so huge that most people don't understand. That midday slump that most people experience, that's just an insulin spike. And a lot of it goes down to how much inflammation there is in your body. So when you're constantly, to kind of break it down, when you're constantly eating foods that grow inflammation in your GI tract or in your gut, it stops neurotransmitter production, right? And those are, you mentioned serotonin, dopamine, and those are the same chemicals that go to your brain that make you, feel good, that make you, feel human, feel energy, feel joy, feel like you have a purpose. So bad diets is scientifically proven to play with your mental health. And usually most people, if they're going through seasonal depression or if they're going through some sort of a downtime, the first few questions I usually personally ask them is like, how's your nutrition? What are you eating? How are you moving? Are you getting sunlight? And from those few things, I'm not saying that, there aren't disorders that play around with mental health, but a majority of people are just not even starting off there, with their health. And that's one of the biggest things that help us with our mental health. Would you say that there's anything else that can help us protect our mental health besides nutrition? How do you kind of hold back your energy amongst people, amidst everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, totally. And before I even mention anything else besides nutrition, I just want to kind of really reiterate like how crucial it is, because it's like every decision that we make, everything that we think about, the way that we emotionally respond, all of that comes, from our brain. And if we know that our brain is affected by our gut, then we know that that's kind of where we have to start. It's like if you learn meditation, yoga, you walk and jog every morning, all things that are, shown to improve just mental well-being and how you feel, but your gut is like on fire and you're missing, the neurotransmitters your brain needs, then all that stuff will maybe temporarily feel good,
Right.
but it just might make you more drained. And you're just like, I'm doing the right things, but you know, why don't I feel better? So like nutrition and kind of like the gut health part of it is so crucial, because like we need to fix the engine
Right.
in our gut and our brain.
Right.
And then we can kind of discuss other things. And
Right.
so assuming like that's taken care of, which is kind of, you know, it's a process. It can take 2 months for some people. But if you have people who, you know, have like irritable bowel syndrome or, you know, Crohn's disease or something like much more chronic, it could take them a little bit longer with the guidance of a doctor.
Right.
And the other thing that's like so crucial is kind of like your focus and your attention. So right now, like I don't own a TV, and I do not watch TV. I usually get on YouTube and I'll look something up specific that either I want to watch or kind of look into. And my main screen is full of news about politics, elections, and of course the coronavirus. And, you know, just reading the title like puts you in fight or flight. Just reading it's like the vaccine could mean, you know, it's another like 6 months of lockdown, or even with the vaccine, we may still not have an answer. And it's designed to kind of get a reaction. And this is kind of something that's been out for a while. It's like negative news works, it ups the ratings, our brains kind of get triggered, fight or flight response, we keep watching, news companies get their ratings. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've kind of cut off like a long time ago, and I would recommend, you know, everyone do the same for, is really, really manage what you watch and what you listen to. You know, you want to be informed. You always want to check your sources. You want to know where your information is coming from. And if every time you turn on the news or, you know, get on the internet and your brain is just blown up with these articles that trigger the fight or flight response, that's chronic stress. You're just living in a chronic state of just alertness, uncertainty, and discomfort. And there's been plenty of research kind of pointing us to how chronic stress affects your immune system. And you want your immune system to be top notch. You want it to be working optimally in general, and especially when there's a pandemic going on. And we have the flu season coming up. So,
and it's super big that you mentioned that, you know, like, I think the biggest thing is the uncertainty that you kind of feel within the times, especially 2020 as a year that's been the theme, uncertainty, right? And humans, that sense of security, like that safety, when it's lifted up, the best thing to do is live by some sort of structure. And I think that's also been taken away from most people, you know, the structure that we've been doing for a while, even if we've been doing it so long that it becomes like, you know, you're doing it without thinking, that gets taken away. You know, now us being the social creatures that we are, we don't get to see our friends, we don't go to work in person. During the daytime, if you're on your laptop and you're working, there's no separation of work and home because you're always at home doing that, right?
It's just this one lump.
It's this one lump. So how does somebody create a goal or a structure to go about things that makes sense right now? What advice would you give off to people?
I would say there's a couple of things that most people can generally do. And that's, I would say, look at your current life situation and maybe ask yourself the following questions. First is, are you dealing with any chronic pain or chronic, you know, condition that you're just feeling every day? If that's going on, then that should be a priority. Whether, you know, you're working with your doctor or, you know, coach or whatever the case may be. Because if you're, you know, living in chronic pain, your nervous system's always triggered and it just throws your whole system off.
Right.
So that would be kind of the first step. And that's sort of what I did, is I just listed down the different pains and discomforts that I'm dealing with and then kind of made a plan to address each one of them.
Right.
And The next thing I would say is look at kind of like the trinity of health. You have movement, nutrition, and exercise. Maybe just give yourself, a non-judgmental rating of like where you feel you are at for each one.
Right.
Like, are you eating mostly whole foods? Are they cooked foods? Or are you eating just mostly frozen meals and, takeout? Are you getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep? Or is it like an average of 4 to 5?
Right.
Are you moving around every day? Whether it's stretching, walking, going up the stairs. Doesn't have to be running a marathon or 5 miles a day, just basic movement. And then kind of start by focusing on one at a time, right? Because this is a lot of stuff and change is always stressful, even when it's really positive.
Right.
And whatever changes you decide to make, always start small. Because when you start with small changes, then you feel good about them. They're easy to turn into a habit, and it's easy to build that positive association where your brain feels good doing it. If you put someone on like a 2-hour workout program and tell them, this is what we're going to do from now on, most people are going to quit within a week or two, as they rightfully should. But if you tell someone, hey, let's start with a 10 to 15 minute walk in the morning,
right,
before you start work, most people can do that. And most people will feel really good doing that. And that's like been studied by science to even like help reduce depression. Literally just 15 minutes of walking. And once you have that, once it's part of your day to walk every morning or go up the stairs or, stretch or play with your dog or, if you have kids, then it's easier to kind of put that in your pocket and say, all right, I got a healthy habit in. It's supporting my physical health and my movement.
Right.
Now, let me look at my nutrition. Let me look at my sleep.
Right.
And kind of take it step by step. It's kind of a long process, but everything that you do gradually will help you feel better every single day.
Right.
It's a cumulative effect. Like, there's no limit to how good you can feel. And the more control you take of your health, the better you feel.
Right.
Just really long term.
And personally, like you mentioned control, I think that's a big thing that relates to somebody else's fulfillment or purpose or happiness. And those are things that you can easily alter. Like everything that's been mentioned right now, it's a matter of you deciding to do it. Walking 15 minutes, going outside, that's something that's obviously social distancing and protecting yourself.
Right.
It can be achieved, choosing the right foods. It's just a little bit of effort that goes a long, long way. And it's in increments. I've also had the opposite, and I've spoke with somebody that gets super hyped about like, all right, now I want to be healthy. I want to be a person that's solid, let me do that. And they got burnt out because they got into this like state of, I want to be a monk, I want to take everything out. I want to cut everything out. And that's also pretty bad. I always tell people that burnout is real, whether it's training or a lifestyle. If you just jump into a new lifestyle, you're most likely going to fail. You know what I mean? And,
And failure is part of the process.
Right.
It should always be taken as feedback. It's never the end. It's never just like a wall that stays there. It's always something that's teaching you about your process, your strategy, and the approach that you have to it.
Right. And I think that setting expectations for yourself too, I think that's good, but realistic expectations. I think that the acronym SMART I mentioned earlier, I think it goes specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and then time bound, right? Did I get it right? I feel like
realistic and then time bound.
Time bound, right? Yeah. If you go by that, I think whether it's training or whether it's a lifestyle thing, I think it goes a long way. And yeah, so if somebody was to start that, if we were to sum it up right now, it would just be the 3 things you said: movement, nutrition, and sleep. Another thing that I wanted to ask you is, with people right now, I think since people are being home all the time, how do we kind of set boundaries with people and their expectations? Because you see people, even if you've been living with your significant other or your family member, you're seeing a whole lot of them, you know what I mean? And I think that goes a long way. People eventually will start to to tick you off. So what are what are some ways, what are some tips you have to protect your mental health when it comes to more of the social aspect of your mental health as opposed to like nutrition and whatnot?
Yeah, and that's definitely crucial. And it's tough. This is one of those things that would be just very different for different people depending on their life situation. Like I've been lucky enough to kind of almost live on my own, so that hasn't been an issue for me.
Right.
A couple of my family members and some friends, you know, when I've talked to them, they're just like, man, they're like, I love my kids, but you know, like I wasn't ready to be with them every single day while I'm working, while teaching them how to do online school.
Right.
And then, you know, for some other people, it's, you know, they may be living with their parents and it's the same thing. It's all people that you love. It's just your routine is thrown off and both of you are stressed out. Eventually, somebody's going to take somebody off.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing there is boundaries. That's a word that's definitely been picking up in our society, and I see it more and more on like Facebook and on Instagram, you know, psychologists, coaches, and even like self-help gurus, whatever, talking about boundaries and how they're so important. And boundaries is just knowing your own needs and kind of being aware of what you need in the moment and being able to express it to another person in a way that they understand.
Right.
And it's one of those things that are really easy to describe, but can be really, really hard to do.
Right.
And it's a work in progress for me. But I would say if I were to just kind of give a quick note on how to handle that, it would be learning how to set boundaries. And again, it starts with being aware of, you know, what's bothering you or what it is that you need. Whether, you know, you need some time for yourself at the end of the day without TV, without any interruptions, whether you need to go to bed by a certain time, if, you know, you need like just time alone, or maybe, you know, your partner or someone you're living with is really busy all the time and you do want more time with them. Whatever the case may be, it's, you know, first be aware of your needs, and then second, express it to that someone who's involved in a way that they understand. And
I think you nailed it. And I think you know, it's just the theme that everybody's kind of experiencing right now. And you know, trying to find that purpose. Another note I had is, how does somebody become motivated to be their best self during this time, especially? I mean, there's, you know, you're an entrepreneur, you know, I'm an entrepreneur. There's many people that are scoping out, but even if you're not doing that, if you're at a job or you're just trying to be better, right? I know you're working at a cert right now where you kind of break down people's decision making. And how do you go about advising somebody? I know, you know, you're not necessarily a complete life coach, but you have a lot of wisdom that I think that people would kind of benefit from. So how would you advise somebody that wants to be motivated, that wants to do something better for themselves, but they're kind of in this, like, you know, stuck position where they just don't know what to do. They're indecisive.
No, I mean, that's exactly where I come in, actually. And, you know, that's my favorite part about helping and coaching people. And whenever you're stuck or you feel stuck, it means that you don't perceive there to be a lot of options for you to do.
Right.
Or you're perceiving, you know, the options that you may have, they have obstacles and you're not sure how to overcome those obstacles. And that's, you know, and I think that's one of the things that's kind of missing in the SMART goals acronym. It's that it doesn't address obstacles, and we all have them. And you should always talk about them. So what if you feel stuck, whether it's at work or, you know, your health, your social life, whatever the case may be,
right.
Ask yourself, what is stopping me right now? And then be brutally honest with yourself. You know, is it time management? Because the most common answer is usually, oh, like, I don't have the time or I don't have the money. And neither of those is true for most people, because whenever we say we don't have the time, it means we probably just haven't been managing our time well.
Right.
And we've all been guilty of it. And the same thing with money and just resources in general. It's like, is there another way for me to get this thing that I want?
Right.
So first, address that obstacle. What is it? And then, write out a little plan or give yourself 3 different options for how you can overcome that obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
And then take action right after.
Right.
Because being stuck is, it equates to like not moving. It's like when you're stuck in traffic, you're surrounded by cars, you can't move.
Right.
And in real life, we usually feel that way, but we always have space to maneuver. We always have space to move once we kind of clear the mental block that is stopping us. So identify the obstacle, set a plan to overcome it. And if you don't know, either talk to a coach or talk to a friend, and then take action.
Right.
And if you fail, you're going to learn something, and then you try again.
Right. And I think that's a big thing. I think the time and also where people's value is, when they want to start something, I feel like where's the value? I think it carries over a lot when it's a purpose that they have that's going to last a lifetime, or it's outside of themselves, I feel like. But when it's something that's kind of like on the number, if it's whether it's just only for money or only for some kind of status, that's where I feel like people get burnt out. So also
Absolutely.
being like brutally honest with yourself. And I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody that wants to have a certain amount of, financial health or status. It's just a matter of like, you have to be, are you doing this for yourself or are you doing this for others? You know what I mean? And that's where I think most people that I've seen that are successful is when they do things that's kind of like outside of themselves. They have a purpose, and finding that purpose, I feel like, will go a long way in your mental health too.
Yeah, it's like having that big why. It's like, why are you working in the first place? Why are you making money? Why did you choose the field that you're in? Why do you get up in the morning? If it is just to make money, just to get through the day, to put, food on the table, that's fine. That's always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, you're a human being. It's like, what is your being for?
Right.
Why do you, like, not to get too deep, but it's like, why do you exist?
Right.
And to me, that's like a daily thing that I always ask myself, and I have to remind myself, like, why I'm here and what I'm after. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, if I don't, then you're just kind of focused on the task, and the task becomes meaningless. So tapping into that why and figuring out like what your reason is, why it's so important for you to, take that walk every morning. Like, what will that translate to? How will that affect your relationships with your family, with your kids? How would it, affect your sleep? How is this going to affect you when you're like, 60, 70?
Right.
Like, what kind of life do you want to have for yourself? And if there's one thing that, this pandemic is teaching us, is that whenever we think things are fine or things are normal, they can completely get dismantled, at the snap of a finger.
Right.
Like, all that stuff is just very uncertain and unstable.
Over.
Yeah, it's just, and when all that outside stuff, crumbles around you, and on top of that, you don't know who you are, you don't know what your goals are, then you're at the mercy of whoever's in power and whoever's in charge.
Right.
And that's not something like that anyone should be okay with. So It's like tapping into that inner.
Well, I think, personally for some people, you can kind of see it. Some people that are operating on the wires. The last guest I had, Adrian Wright, we both know him. He's driven strictly on the why, and you can kind of tell how he handles situations. It's more, these things are happening, I'm gonna adapt, I'll just switch over and I'll do it. Just like any other human, you'll still feel some type of way. You might be frustrated, you might be upset, but it's like, all right, this is where you're at. Do you want somebody to feel bad for you, or do you want to keep on moving? Do you want to keep on moving out? There's like a fly right here. I'm like, what is going on? Do you want to keep moving on and doing what you can do? You know what I mean? And personally, like, as trainers, I feel as if you're laughing right now because there's a whole fly. There's all bloopers right here.
It's coming back.
Oh man, but yeah, like with the gym, there's a lot of opportunities where, personally for me, I could have been like, all right, this is happening, I can go ahead and stop everything, which is like what most gym owners do. I mean, we are a small business right now, so we were able to kind of adapt. We went virtual. We started training programs, which is all on the website, by the way. Or we can just call it quits, you know. And I think that since I know my why, I think there was an easier transition.
Absolutely.
And you know, it goes a long way. And I think you did the same thing too. You have your Fit Alpha, working on mental health, helping people one-on-one. And I've personally come to you, and that's a whole different conversation, you know, amongst each other. If you're a professional, there's always the conversations and assistance you have with one another. That's not, nobody's perfect. We're definitely not perfect, you know.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah. Absolutely.
You know, relying on one another. Yeah, relying on one another and finding out things that we don't know from each other goes a long way, you know. There's some stuff when I used to think like, oh, obviously everybody knows this, but then I would say it and people will learn something and vice versa, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah, you talk to somebody and they teach you something and your mind is completely blown.
Right.
Looking at you, they're like, have you been living in a closet? Like, what's going on?
Right.
I've never heard of this before. Like,
right.
I'm just hearing about it.
Right. And that's why I thought this podcast would be so important, because these are basically it's just like a nonchalant talk we would have in the break room or when we meet each other, you know, in person, just to talk about, right? And I think a lot of people can benefit just hearing your perspective. And, you know, you break things down so well that it almost creates no obstacle. I mean, I don't want to say no obstacle, but you have ways to maneuver around things. And when I've spoken to you before and I've told you like, all right, I have this business plan, I have this going on and this going on and this going on, you're like, all right, you know what, chill, just relax, bring out a piece of paper. Yeah, you know, slow down, bring out a piece of paper, what's important to you, what do you see yourself. And like, even as a health professional, you know, you're like, whoa, actually you help so many people, you kind of lose yourself in that. So what are some ways where, you know, you deal with people all the time, what are some ways that you help people, but you also don't lose a piece of yourself trying to help somebody, so to prevent that burnout? What would you say to people just to help themselves out?
Want to help somebody. I've been in that situation many a times. And then there's another part of me that's just like, like, I don't really want to do it, or I don't have the time, or I don't have the energy. Right. And then we do it anyways. And then sometimes it works out okay. Sometimes we realize like, I'm too tired to do it. It's not working out well. They can tell that I don't want to be here or something. Right. And it ends up, blowing up in your face when initially you had good intentions.
Right.
And again, it's boundaries. It's like, what do you need right now?
Right.
And then are you able to help this person without crossing your own boundaries, without sacrificing a part of your time or your energy?
Right.
And I think just asking yourself that question and just waiting for an answer is super powerful. Because if you don't explore that possibility and you're like, oh, like I either have to help them or I have to like, drop them and just ignore them or ghost them. It's like, no, those are like, that's like the fool's choice. There's always like a third alternative. It's like,
right,
you really care about someone. How can you help them while still, respecting,
right.
I don't know if that's the right word, but it's like, adhering to your own boundaries and
right.
your own, well-being. Because, you got to put the mask on yourself first before you can help somebody else. And if you don't have enough oxygen, honestly, you shouldn't be helping anybody. Nobody's going to really want your help. It's just not the same.
Yeah. If you come to a position where you're spreading yourself thin, I feel like they're experiencing the worst you possible, and you might even do more damage than good, because people trust you, as a health professional. People trust you to, when, with their secrets, honestly, with their insecurities, with their goals and whatnot. And if you're at a place where you're not good yourself, that's why when I see doctors or like gym teachers or whatever, and they clearly don't care about their health, it's not to say that everybody's different, but if you're showing me that this is okay, it goes a long way. You know what I mean? So if somebody,
you're a role model,
if you're a role, you have a responsibility, and what I like to do personally, you should never expect to live on people's opinions of you. But one thing I always do to myself is like when I'm at my lowest point, I know that, you know, things are not looking too good. I have like this out of the body experience where I go outside of my body and I kind of look at myself where I'm at and what kind of person I am. Am I wholesome? Am I a person I would hang out with? Like is this guy, am I gonna hang out with him forever? Like would I
If I see this dude, you know, would I stop and, you know, have a
yeah,
conversation?
you know what I mean? And if it's at a point right now where I would hang out with myself or I wouldn't learn from you or whatever, I feel like personally for me, not for anybody else, I wouldn't want to experience that, right? So that kind of motivates me just because you want to do good while you're still here. You know, everything is not permanent. I know it's going to get a little weird, a little sad, but nothing is permanent. So your footprint, your carbon footprint on Earth, you know, what were you like as a person? And I mean, personally, that's the biggest thing for me.
I totally get it, and I love that you said that, because that is a very powerful way of looking at yourself, is to kind of snap out of your own, like, you know, tunnel vision that you're in, especially like when you're overworked and really tired or upset, and just kind of, you know, take a peek from the outside, kind of look at yourself, see what you learn, and then you're always going to learn something, you know? You know, if you see yourself, you're like, oh, how am I sitting? How am I walking? How am I carrying myself? Do I just sound tired and disinterested when I'm talking to people? If that's the case, then it's like, you got to recharge, my dude. And one of the things that, and again, it's like how you recharge is different for anybody. And like for me, it's either just alone time, writing, sleeping, you know, taking a bath, going to get a massage. I mean, right now it's not a good idea, but when it used to be okay. Or, you know, phone a friend. Like, you know, as a professional, sometimes you can't drop work. You still have to work. And, you know, if you're overworked and you're just something you got to deal with, you know, phone somebody, whether it's a friend or, you know, like a therapist, and just vent, let it out, and then boom.
Right. And I think that's huge, you know, like I've known a lot of people, and personally for myself, I do this too, where you kind of, I don't want to say embrace it because that's a positive term, where you kind of hold down negative thought. You know, when something happens, some people react to it, they don't know how to go about it. There's this like, I'm just tough it out mentality. You know, sometimes it's good because, you know, you have this callous towards situations. But sometimes it's also toxic because, you know, you letting poison sit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, it helps you get shit done in the moment.
Right.
But you should always remember that, like, it's not something that you want to hold on to.
Right.
That's what turns into muscle tension, like, you know, gastrointestinal problems.
Big time.
Your nervous system is like all cranked up, and you're like,
yeah, man.
So,
but yeah, man, I think the stuff that you mentioned on how to get started to become healthy, goal setting, I mean, it goes a long way, you know. And, you know, for the viewers that are going to be watching this, you know, rewatch it, see what we can take from it. Is there anything you're developing with Fit Alpha that you want to talk about?
Absolutely, yeah. And this would be really helpful to people who are just starting out too, is I put together a gut healing guide that kind of breaks down to you first, like, what are the signs and symptoms of, you know, having an unhealthy gut, to kind of help you scan for it and screen for it. And then what are some like really simple steps that you can take, you know, today, this week, and next week to get started. And it's kind of a general overview. It's like a 5-page guide maybe. And yeah, that's all I have so far.
I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing you on the podcast, but, you know, definitely not the last time. There's more conversations. I mean, you have a lot of expertise in mental health, goal setting, health coaching, life coaching. So, you know, so we appreciate you, Zaid, you know, my guy. We're going to be back at it again. For everybody watching, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe and share for more content, and we'll see you guys soon. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, my dude.
All right, my guy.